Hello everyone, Espen or Shori here. Today I'll be doing a draft review of Saigon Buffaloes versus Detonation Focus Me. I think Detonation Focus Me ended up having a winning draft here, but they could have had an even more winning draft if played correctly. And I also want to try to highlight some of the mistakes that Saigon Buffaloes made in their draft, despite them actually ending up winning this game. I think it's very important for people to recognize that there are a lot of advantages to be had from winning your draft, and it would allow a minor region team like Detonation Focus Me to win against something like a Saigon Buffaloes, right? Even though both of these teams are minor regions, I think VCS is officially considered a minor region. Everyone knows that VCS is popping up in terms of strength, because just they have a massive player base. Their scene is starting to be more established, as far as I'm aware. Their player base is the third largest in the world, if I'm not mistaken, behind China and Korea. So obviously it's there are people arguing that the VCS will be the next big thing, right? The third strongest region after Korea and China. So I think it's also interesting to look at what these guys are thinking in draft and try to reason and debunk. I don't want to say necessarily, but explain why some of the things they're doing in draft are incorrect. I think looking at draft is probably the thing about League of Legends that I find the most interesting, because there are a lot of different champions you can play. Of course, gameplay matters a lot as well. But I think if you can secure an advantage in draft, you can beat teams that are considerably stronger than you. If you understand how your draft is supposed to be played, if you understand the strengths of your draft, the strengths of the enemy draft, you can pretty easily win games where you are massively skill differenced. So, we open up with a Karma ban on blue side from Saigon Buffaloes. Seems a bit weird to me. Usually you want red side to ban Karma. If possible, you can first pick Karma on blue side. The champion just creates very weird drafts because of how strong she is. She usually forces you to play something like a Soraka Senna in the bot lane, right? She usually like incites a Soraka counter pick or something along those lines, to try to like scale along with her. Even though Karma will beat the Soraka in lane pretty hard, you outscale the Karma as something like a Soraka. So if you play Soraka Senna into a Karma lane, you will get pushed in, but as long as you have a jungler or a mid laner that can cover for you, usually you're fine. You can also go the complete other route and play a very, very aggressive lane if the enemy team locks in Karma, and just play something like a LeBlanc Lee Sin mid lane, or a Ryze Lee Sin, a Syndra Lee Sin, a Syndra Sin Zhao, something like this, like a lane that pushes a lot, and then you can just try to permanently roam bot lane and kill the enemy bot lane, make sure Karma doesn't even get to play the laning phase. Those are the two options you generally speaking have when you're playing against something like a Karma. But usually drafts get very, very wacky when you're playing Karma first pick, because either this team will play something weird like Senna Soraka, or they will play full on kill, kill, kill. If we ever make a mistake, we lose the game. Which is something like LeBlanc Lee Sin, Syndra Sin Zhao, Syndra Viego, Syndra Lee Sin, something like this, right? With a kill lane bot lane, like Nautilus Kalista, Lucian Braum, Lucian Nami. You can even play Draven Leona, Draven Nautilus, something along those lines. So yeah, don't really understand the Karma ban. Then we respond with a Twisted Fate ban, which I think is the biggest bait pick this entire tournament. Twisted Fate has bad matchups in mid lane. He has a lot of counter picks. Sylas not just being the only one. People are currently only using Sylas against him. I am very interested to see when people figure out that you can do some very wacky stuff against Twisted Fate mid lane. If people lock in Twisted Fate, you can play Sivir mid against it, permanently shove him in, which opens you up to be able to play something like a Karthus in the jungle. You can play Yasuo Diana into Twisted Fate, and he can't play the game. You can play Tristana into Twisted Fate. Tristana is a very, very strong champion into TF, makes it very hard for him to play, as long as you just make sure you take Cleanse, which Tristana again opens you up to play something like an Evelynn, something like a Karthus, and I think Karthus at the moment is the strongest champion in the game. So I think once teams start realizing that there are a lot of wacky things you can do against Twisted Fate, he will not be picked as much. Also, just the fact that you can play Syndra, you can play Orianna, you can play Victor, you can play Ryze into TF, and they all kind of neutralize him. You can play champions that do what Twisted Fate does, but just better. Galio, Ryze. Twisted Fate has a very single, like a one-dimensional way of playing fights. You gold cut someone, you jump on top of them, and you try to kill them. You play for picks. Galio can do multiple things. Galio can either follow-up engage with his team if he's playing with a dive champion like a Kalista, or not a Kalista, sorry, like a Camille top lane, or like a Jarvan in the jungle. He can follow up, dive in, kill the enemy team. Or if he's playing against a team that is diving into him, Galio can work as an anti-dive champion because of his ult and because of his W. He has multiple styles. Twisted Fate does not. Ryze is the exact same way. Ryze cannot dive in the same way that Galio can. However, Ryze is a lot stronger at anti-dive than something like a Galio. Ryze does get priority mid lane as well, and Ryze can play side lanes during the mid game very, very well. There are very few champions that actually beat Ryze side lane once he gets 1, 2, 3 items. 3 items usually is the breaking point on him. 2, 3 items. Or Ryze can also go tank, act as a front line, and then all of a sudden now you have a tank in the mid lane, which opens up other draft or other options in different roles, right? So I think Twisted Fate ban, bad if you understand what you can play into it. LeBlanc, makes sense if you want to play a strong bot lane and you don't want the enemy team to pick LeBlanc Lee Sin. I don't think Detonation Focus Me has proven themselves to be a team that can competently play LeBlanc with a strong jungler and not manage to fuck it up. It is a composition where if you make a single mistake on this team, you are probably just losing the game, because you need to constantly accelerate the game, use the fact that you have LeBlanc and an aggressive jungler to gain massive advantages on the map, and close out the game in probably 30 minutes, or the game's over. 25-30 minutes, or the game's just over. So if you make a single mistake and you end up falling behind, or if you're even with the enemy team, you're probably losing on that draft, which means that I don't think Detonation Focus Me should play that. If you're playing against T1 or Dawa or maybe RNG or something along those lines, LeBlanc ban makes sense, but I don't think it makes sense against these boys. Lucian ban is completely fine. I think Lucian ban is reasonable. Enemy team can triple flex the Lucian, so it's a bit annoying to play against. Urgot ban, to me, I don't really understand it. To me, it screams that you want to play something like a Gangplank in the top lane, because Urgot is pretty good against Gangplank. Either that or Evi is just, or EVI, I don't know how his name is supposed to be pronounced. It's just an Urgot one trick, in which case that gets banned, that's fine. Don't really agree with the Ahri ban here. If enemy team decides to pick Ahri, you have a lot of champions that can do well into it. The first champions that come to mind are Veigar and Ryze, two anti-dive champions. You can also play something like a Victor, although that gets a little bit weird at level 6 if the enemy team picks a jungler that can dive into you. But I think Ryze and Veigar are two champs that are very, very strong into Veigar. I don't know what happened to Veigar. I don't know why he's completely disappeared from this tournament, but I definitely think he should be picked more. So we see Kalista first pick, which I don't think is ideal. Unless you can triple flex it, I don't think it's that good. I think it has counters. I think Cillian will do very well into it. Kalista needs the enemy team to be short range and needs the enemy team to be diving into her. If the enemy team picks something that's more mid-range, long-range, Kalista is going to be completely useless. She's going to be reliant on mistakes from the enemy team, and she's going to be reliant on having 4 engagers on her team, basically, that can start a fight and let Kalista clean it up. Kalista cannot really... She has a very one-dimensional playstyle, if that makes sense. She has to be constantly hitting. She loves playing against short-range stuff. If you pick short-range stuff into Kalista, she will do very well. But if you pick anything that is long-range or control-y, it gets very, very hard for her to play. So if she has to play against a Victor, that's a bit annoying. If she has to play against Serath, Azir, Orianna even, Syndra, she can't get in. If she has to play against a Zillion support or something like that, if she has to play against an Ezreal, obviously she's good in lane against Ezreal, but it gets very hard for her to play fights outside of that. If she has to play against an Ornn or something along that, Camille, it gets very hard for her. And Ashe, these champions all good against Kalista. So I think Kalista first pick is very easily abusable by picking mid-range control anti-dive on this side. We respond with Wukong, which I think is a great response. Wukong is quadruple flex. You can play in top, jungle, mid, AD carry. Only with Senna, obviously. So we pick Wukong, which I think is absolutely spot-on, brilliant response. Now, what I would like to see as an AD carry, or well, not necessarily as an AD carry, but what I would like to see here is Wukong Senna. This preserves Wukong's flex for bot lane, and it gives you a champion like Senna, which can be paired with a lot of champions that are very, very powerful into something like a Kalista, such as Nasus, such as Nautilus. Both champions that are very, very good into Kalista. Plus, Senna gets to scale for free against Kalista. Well, not for free, but Senna can also do pretty well into Kalista due to her Q slow. Like, Senna can do very well here. I think Senna would be a much better pick than Aphelios. Aphelios can now be counterpicked in the same way that Kalista can be counterpicked. because he needs the exact same thing from the enemy team. He's a very conditional champion that can only really fight if the enemy team is diving into him, or if he has an enchanter that can speed him up, or if he has a Cillian or something like that, that can let him get into the range of enemy team. But Aphelios, much like Kalista, very, very weak into control stuff. Very, very weak into range and control. What I'm looking at here is if this team picks Aphelios, well, maybe I can flex the Kalista to mid lane or top lane, and I can play something like a Siggs here. And then how are you going to play the game? Or I can play Vel'Koz support, Serath support. And how does Aphelios ever get to play the game? Well, the response is, or the answer is, he does not. He just simply is not allowed to play the game anymore. Because he's so bad against range and control stuff. So I don't like the Aphelios pick here. I think Senna pick would be a lot better. It keeps your comp a lot wider, because Senna has multiple styles. You can't really play tanks into Senna, because she will, even though people are like, well, she has low DPS, but she does percentage HP, and she can build Kraken Slayer, right? So she can work as a tank killer. She can play with a comp that dives in. She can play with a comp that peels back and just plays range. Senna has a lot of multiple styles. I think she should be utilized a lot more as a champion. Gwen here feels very weird to me. You cannot pick Diana here. If you're playing Diana here, you're just griefing the entire draft, and your coach should be fired. It's the only thing I can say to that. For the love of God, not Diana. I think if you played Yasuo here, and then Diana here, it would be okay. But even then, that feels kind of bad. What I would like to see instead is, first of all, don't pick Gwen. What you can do here, very, very cool. You pick Karthus here. Karthus is pretty good against Aphelios. It's very hard for Aphelios to auto-attack the Karthus, and Karthus can keep him at bay with Qs. Your Karthus can be flexed to AD carry, in case your Kalista gets flexed to mid lane. Your Karthus can be flexed to mid lane. Your Karthus can play jungle. Like, he is very, very wide. He keeps your draft very wide. In terms of, he can do a lot of things. He's good as an anti-diver. He is good as a just straight-on fighter. He's good at controlling areas. And he's very good against squishier champions, if that gets picked as well. And he can also play a tank shredder build. Karthus, very, very wide as a champion. Can play 3 different roles. Why are we not picking him here? I think Karthus should come in here. And then he can be flexed jungle, mid, AD carry. Your Kalista can be played top, mid, AD carry as well. So you have a very wide draft in terms of flex picks. I think Karthus would be very, very nice here. And then along with the Karthus, you would probably pick a support. Now that support could be Leona. It could be Nautilus. It could be... what else? I think those are the only 2 champions, which is a little bit annoying for Karthus because it obviously incentivizes Merc Treads on something like a Wukong. But if you pair it with, if you play Karthus and Leona here, for example, or Nautilus, I think it's very, very strong. It allows your Kalista to be flexed mid lane in case Karthus wants to go bot lane, which would be very, very hype. It allows you to play Kalista Nautilus or Kalista Leona, which I think is also very, very powerful. I would personally go with Nautilus instead of Leona. But yeah, I think it would be very, very powerful. So I think Karthus should come in here and then Leona. Karthus plus support. I hate the Diana Gwen pick. If you want to play Diana, then for the love of God, pick Yasuo here. And then at least you have a winning mid jungle, and you just have to permanently dive the enemy bot lane, although you don't see the enemy support. I think here the pick is very, very obvious. You're playing against 3 auto-attack reliant champions. You have a good matchup, top lane. Like, you have Gwen pick top lane, and you have 2 auto-attack reliant champions. Quote-unquote auto-attack. Diana's not really that auto-attack reliant, but her passive does do a lot of damage. I think the pick here is just Jax. You snap pick Jax. You can play Fiora as well if you want to, or Tryndamere if you want to play really, really split pushy. But I think Jax is by far the best pick here. I think Jax is an absolute Exodia pick here. I think he should be picked, no doubt. Because the enemy team is already showing what they're going to do, right? They have 3 champions that dive in. They have 3 champions that are auto-attack reliant. These 2 champions cannot save the rest of this draft. This draft is diving in. They are headfirst diving into you. So what you're thinking on this side now is, we need anti-dive. We need quote-unquote winning matchups. We need something that can hold the Gwen in side lane during mid-game, so they cannot play through sides and win in that way. Because if we pick anti-dive and pick something that can win side lane against Gwen, this team will no longer have a way to win the game. The only way they can win the game is full-on dive-in, fist-fight this team and win team fights in that regard by diving into you, or Gwen has to split push and win through side lane. Those are the only 2 ways this team can win. They cannot poke, they cannot do anything like that. They have to fight or play through side. If this team has better team fighting team and an anti-dive team comp, the only way this team will win is through Gwen. So Jax nullifies Gwen. And Jax does very well in fights here as well. So I think Jax should definitely be picked here. I don't understand why you wouldn't pick Jax here. Doesn't make sense to me. So you pick Alistar for God knows what reason. I don't know why. Like, I don't understand. If you want the support here, pick Cillian. Pick Cillian, and this team is diving into a Cillian Aphelios. Like, how would they... Like, they can one-shot Aphelios once. Fucking good one, dude. And then we just Cillian are him. We're playing Cillian into... Like, we're playing Cillian with Wukong as well. I think if you want to be annoying here, you can pick Cillian. But I think the best pick by far is Jax. Now, you could argue that if you play Cillian, this team will just play Leona and absolutely fist you in lane, but you have 2 bans for that. Although one of your bans has to be Yasuo. So maybe that's a little bit awkward. So first ban has to be Yasuo. Yeah, that makes sense. Vex. I guess your team is full on diving, but I don't think Vex is the biggest anti-dive threat you have to worry about. I think you have to worry about Veigar. I think you have to worry about Lissandra. I think you have to worry about, like, Victor, even. I think you have to worry about Azir. I think you have to worry about Syndra more. Because if you have losing mid lane, like if your mid laner gets pushed in by this side, and you cannot play for bot side successfully, you're just going to lose the game. So I think Syndra ban should come out instead. I think something like Syndra ban is good here. I think you can even ban... No, I think Syndra ban should just happen. This team even has the option of flexing Wukong top lane and picking Karthus jungle, by the way. And then they can pick something like a... Oh, what can they even pick mid lane then? Most anti-dive champions are mages, so maybe you don't want to do that. But it would be pretty cool to see. Maybe Akshan, make sure you can always get prio. But I think what this team is looking for is for sure Syndra. Because Yaharong is also a Syndra player, if that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. He's also a Syndra player. So what do we ban here? Probably Akshan. We need to ban AD mid laners. Akshan is probably the biggest threat. We just don't ban anything? What's up? Oh, we ban Nautilus? If you want to ban a support, I think Leona is better ban. But sure. Nautilus is not great as a ban, I'm gonna be honest. This team bans Syndra? Yeah, that makes sense. You need to ban Syndra here. Syndra is super, super powerful. Because if you can permanently shove in the enemy mid lane and play anti-dive, which Syndra can in fights, her E is very, very... Like, her Q-Alt-E combo makes it very hard to dive into her. Like, you have to all dive onto her and kill her at the same time. And if she plays fight a little bit more defensively, lets her team get engaged on, she can play as a very hard, like, anti-dive champion. And she also controls space very well. So I think Syndra ban is good. I think you should ban Akshan here instead. I think here... I think Jax should still just be your pick, by the way. I think Jax here is very, very good. You know Gwen is going top lane. You know this is going jungle. You don't know if this is going mid lane or bot lane. But it's like Jax is just the Exodia pick here. Like, for sure Jax should just come out. I don't know why you would not play Jax here. Like, Jax is just the best pick by far. If you want to play mid lane and save counter pick for top lane, for some reason, even though you don't see the enemy mid lane, you would obviously just want to counter pick top lane now because you know Gwen is going top lane, and then after you see these 2 picks, you pick mid lane afterwards because then you get counter pick to the entire enemy team comp and to your lane in mid lane. But if for some unknown reason you don't know if Gwen is going top lane, which I don't fucking know, maybe this team plays Diana mid lane and Gwen jungle, and then I don't know, maybe they... I don't see a world where Gwen doesn't go top lane here. So I don't see a world where Jax is not, like, just the pick here. But if you really want to, you can play Veigar. If you want to blind pick Veigar, that's cool as well. Because you're playing against 3 dive champs, and these 2 champs are gonna be diving champs. The only worry I have is if you pick Veigar here, and this team is competent, they pivot out of their dive comp, because now you're playing Veigar and Aphelios, which are both 2 champions that relies on the enemy team diving in. So if this team is competent at drafting, Xerath no, you can't even pick Xerath. Why can you not pick Xerath? Because these are 3 AP champions then. You don't have anything that can pivot out of your dive comp. You need to play an AD mid laner. Yeah, you don't have anything that can pivot out of dive. There's not an AD mid laner that pokes, is there? I can't think of one. So you can't even pick Xerath here. Which is what would be good if you pick Veigar here. Or Corki. Something like this, right? Or Vel'Koz. But you can't, because you have Diana and Gwen. And this goes back to why Diana Gwen on Art or B2, B3 is so bad. Because it ruins the rest of your draft. You have to play full-on commit dive now. And this team should be able to recognize that and pick champs that are good into dive. Such as Veigar. So we want to see Veigar, we want to see Jax, and then this team just wins. Like it's just GG. You can pick Ryze here if you want to as well. If you're worried about enemy team diving in, getting a mid laner that can push in Veigar and then roaming bot lane to try to kill enemy bot lane. Which I understand if that's what you're worried about. In case this team locks in Leona here, you pick Veigar here, and then they pick something like, I don't know, what if they pick... They need an AP champ that dives in. They can play Sylas maybe, try to push you in and dive bot lane. That could work. They can play... They can't play Akali. They can play... But they can't pick AP. No, they can't actually pick AP. They have to pick an AD mid laner. They can swap the Kalista to mid lane, shove in Veigar, and try to dive bot lane, I guess. But that doesn't feel very good either. Because then you're playing Kalista into Veigar, which is the easiest gank setup in the world. And you need to run Cleanse on the Kalista, which takes away one of your combat summoners. Or one of your, like, aggressive summoner spells. So, it's like, maybe you can play Akshan here. And then Leona. Like, you pick Akshan Leona here. And if you have Veigar here, that feels a little bit bad. But that's also why I would have liked to see an Akshan ban here. Because then Akshan will shove in the Veigar and he will permanently roam bot lane. And it will just be an absolute, like... It will just be Mortal Kombat in the bot lane. And Veigar's not going to be able to respond to it. So I think if you ban Akshan here, you can pick Veigar here. But this is also just a long tangent to say, pick Jax here and wait with Veigar to 5th pick. So you see these two champions. And then if the enemy team picks Akshan here, you don't pick Veigar. You pick Victor instead. And then Victor will play into Akshan. And Akshan cannot beat Victor. And Victor will work as an anti-dive champion against all of these champions, and you will just win. And you have winning side with Jax. If you pick Sori here, you're absolutely griefing, and your coach deserves to be fired. I think Vel'Koz is not a great pick here either. Because again, what if you run into Akshan? And what if you run into a Kalista flex mid lane? I think Kai'Sa is an awful pick here. She should not be touched. I think you... But you can't even play Siggs here, because you're playing this. You can't even play Serath support either, because you're playing this. Like, these two champions are just griefing your entire draft. You play Kai'Sa Zed, again, this team is full on diving. Kai'Sa can't go AP, because then you have triple AP. So you are committed to diving. So surely we just play Jax here, and counter the 5 auto-attack reliant champions. We have 1 champion in League of Legends. This team... 5 champions that need to auto-attack. 5 champions need to auto-attack. We have 1 champion in League of Legends that dodges auto-attacks. Surely we can locate him in the draft, in Champion Select, on the client right now. 3 letters. 3 letters, man. Jax, J-A-X, please just lock him in, man. The game is over. Again, he should be here. He should be here instead. But please just tell me you find him here. Tryndamere? He doesn't dodge auto attacks, he's just a big Viking. Imagine if he had a real weapon. Oh no, not Tryndamere. Tryndamere accomplishes the initial goal of being good against Gwen in side lane. The problem is you didn't fulfill your other criteria of being very, very strong anti-dive. You are strong anti-dive with Aphelios, but Aphelios is even better anti-dive if you have an Enchanter support, something like a Lulu, something like a Cillian, which I recommended earlier, because this team clearly showed that they were going to play full-on engage, which means that you can very easily deduct that you will need an Enchanter with your Aphelios because you need to play anti-dive, because this team has to dive when they show these 3 champions. They have to, they have no other options. So you should be able to notice that Lulu Cillian would be very, very good here. You should also notice that Veigar would be even better mid lane. You have better team fighting than this team, I will admit. If you play fights properly, it is still better, but it could be even stronger. Tryndamere serves the initial purpose of if you have stronger team fight, make sure Gwen can't win through side lane, which I don't hate. It is not the worst pick you could go for. Jax would be better because he can team fight even better. He provides more to fights than Tryndamere, because I can imagine the way this game will play is Tryndamere will be splitting, Gwen will group with team, and then Gwen will be more useful in fights than Tryndamere, but if you're playing Jax instead of Tryndamere, Jax will do a whole lot more in fights, right? So I think Jax should for sure be played instead here. And I think you should be playing Veigar mid lane. And I think you should be playing a different support. But you have Wukong, you have Aphelios, and you have Alistar. You even have Vel'Koz. 3 champions that are very good at anti-dive, or like competent. Wukong. Enemy team jumps in. Wukong double knocks up the entire front line that tries to dive in on his team. Aphelios rains down DPS. Alistar knocks up whoever jumps in. Vel'Koz plays safe and EW ults and shreds the entire enemy team. I think Detonation Focus Me has a winning draft. It could have just been even more winning. And this team is an absolute clusterfuck that has one way of playing the game. That way is Kalista pushes in Vel'Koz, moves into river, and tries to dive bot lane. And if that doesn't work, the game is over. If this team does not kill bot lane at least twice before 15 minutes, the game is just over. This team has one way of playing fights. Either Sett finds a crazy flank. If you don't want flanks on this team, you can lose. Either Sett or Diana finds a very good flank, or Gwen manages to get on backline, and you have no way of getting her off if Alistar is isolated or something like that. Or if these 2 champions are isolated. But this team has to dive in and they have to find an isolated carry and try to kill them. That is the only way they can win. So if this team just plays competently, there's no way to lose with these 4 champions together grouped. So I think Detonation Focus Me as winning draft. But yeah, that is my drafting rant. As long as this team understands how to play fights. So Detonation Focus Me should recognize we do not dive into the enemy team. The enemy team has to dive into us. What we do is we take space with Vel'Koz, and then we let our frontline move up and work as an anti-diving tool. Alistar stays with our carries in case he needs to knock away Gwen or Diana, and doesn't allow for them to get caught, because if Vel'Koz or Aphelios gets caught, and we don't have an enchanter or any way to knock them away, because we locked in Alistar, right? Instead of Cillian. If we locked in Cillian, then it would be a little bit different, but Alistar still needs to function as a peeling champion against these 2 champions in fights, and Wukong needs to focus as a disruptor that gives space to Aphelios and Vel'Koz, and then how can this team ever play? They cannot, is the simple answer. So as long as this team recognizes how they have to play fights, they will win the game. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that rant. I enjoy talking about draft a lot, and I'll probably do a couple more draft reviews for MSI, seeing as there's probably a whole lot of things that could be done better. I really want to see more Twisted Fates being left open, picking AD champion mid lane, like a Tristana, into it, and then playing Karthus jungle, and just absolutely demolishing the enemy team. That's kind of what I want to start seeing. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and have a good one. See ya.